Esteri Slovacchia. Ministro degli Esteri di Ungaria.
Thanks for the invitation. Good to be here. Good to be here.
It's very good.
Yeah.
If we don't say everything together, there is a district.
Actually, I am families are envying each other, right? To see each other so often. Thank you for the invitation. Wonderful hospitality.
Ministro degli Esteri di Albania.
Here, please. Here. 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 Thank you. Ciao.
Ministro segretario di Stato degli Esteri del Giappone.
Buongiorno. Giusto? Piacere.
This way, thank you.
Really?
Yes, it did.
Let me know. Yes. Thank you. Oh,
This way.
thank you.
There's a rivalry. I think the photographers like to take a photograph just in front of the logo. Thank you very much.
Both together.
degli esteri d'Armenia. Ministro degli esteri del Kazakistan.
Thank you very much for your hospitality. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the invite.
Ministro degli esteri della Belarus.
Grazie. Thank you very much and have a good working day.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Anche di questa che telefono.
E dentro più inizi stanno però dice che no, stiamo andando, sì.
Il primo vice primo ministro e il ministro degli esteri della Serbia.
These days, yes, yes.
Anche la Bosnia.
أنا أشوف أنه عمل أمور.
So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, again a warm welcome here in Milan. Today we will have a couple of busy working day, even exciting, I would say. There are several elements that we will discuss together, but for the moment I would like to declare open the 25th meeting of our organization. The hammer is always symbolic, important moment. It is a great honor to welcome all of you here. We have a good number of documents to see together. We have in front of us 1.5 busy day of discussion. Is an ideal moment to have an exchange of view. And I hope that the set of documents that we have prepared has been carefully examined, because that will be an important concrete part of our conference. And let me therefore wish to all of us a good work and an inspired discussion and a fruitful conclusion of it. Thank you very much. Okay. So let me now proceed on the agenda item 2, the adoption of the agenda. If you have, or maybe better to say, if you don't have any remark on the agenda, we can adopt it and consider it adopted. Are there any observations or remarks on the agenda of our conference? I don't see any, so thank you very much. The agenda is adopted. Then now we move on point number 3, item number 3 of our agenda, address by the OSCE chairperson in office, meaning myself, and my address will be delivered as usual in my national language, the Italian, so that you can listen the harmonic sound of Italian in Italy, and I hope you will enjoy it. But I also hope you will agree or appreciate the content of what I'm going to say. Thank you very much for your attention. Benvenuti.
Welcome, welcome once again. Welcome to Milan. Milan is an Italian city which, in one sense, looks towards the east of our organization, but on the other hand also looks westwards, also to the south, as well as to the north, by virtue of its location in the center of Europe. So it truly is a central location for hosting this conference, and we're very grateful to the city authorities for having helped us organize this event. Now, Milan is a historical city, but at the same time an extremely modern and dynamic region, one of the most dynamic parts of the world. And I hope that over the next couple of days you will have an opportunity to visit the city. This is the 25th meeting of our organization's Ministerial Council. So this is a silver jubilee. We are celebrating the silver jubilee of this organization. This is an extremely important moment in time. 25 years of age means that you're mature, and it means that you are entering your working adult life if you're talking about human beings. And I think that the same holds true for an organization. So, you know, we've been through our adolescence, our youth is behind us, we are celebrating our 25th birthday, so we have reached our full majority. We are truly in now a mature phase. We are a young organization, but one which today has reached its maturity and has to rise to the challenges of the present. It is a great honor for Italy to be chairing this organization. The reality today, however, is quite different to when it last was at the helm back in 2004. We have friends from Austria and Slovakia who are here alongside me, and they form the Troika. This is the chairmanship in office, and we have the outgoing as well as the incoming chairs forming this team. We have, of course, a Secretary General alongside us as well, the Secretary General responsible for running the administrative bodies of the organization. But first and foremost, my gratitude goes to all of you, representatives of participating countries as well as organizations who represent the collective spirit as well as the lifeblood of this organization. We gather here today and come together in the spirit of Helsinki. The spirit of Helsinki means that we look to the future on the basis of the experience of the past. We're talking about quite a different sense of international conditions, but the spirit of Helsinki is as relevant as it ever was in the past. We have to deal, however, with a diverse set of issues, and we have seen certain divisions or splits in international relations, but we here have an opportunity to show just how a multilateral organization spanning Vancouver to Vladivostok, as we often say, can stand as a shining example of multilateral cooperation and diplomacy, and something that stands out at international level. And I think it's something that we can show over the next day and a half of our deliberations. At the same time, I think that we have to work to overcome fragmentation in foreign policy as well as divisions between member states. And of course, the public will be watching what we do. And we have to show how we can engage in civil dialogue, all sitting around the same table. And this is the spirit that we must demonstrate here. This is a golden opportunity to look to the future with greater hope. We often hear people expressing their fears. We see a resurgence of old anxieties. And certainly, I don't think there's ever been any such thing as an easy time in the history of human affairs. And things are by no means straightforward today. But I think the fact that we are sitting around the table here together today means that we can perhaps allay certain uncertainties as well as allay people's fears and doubts and overcome our divisions and conflicts. We're also here to show that we are genuinely able to work together, also to demonstrate that we share responsibility, and we have to rise to the challenges that have been entrusted to us. So we enter into this shared responsibility, and in doing so, we render service to our respective communities. We do so in the full knowledge that cooperation, which has been ongoing for the last 25 years and which must continue for at least as long again, is in order to try and fix problems. Now, problems are a part of daily life in all cities, in all communities, as well as in our personal, individual lives. But problems are there to be tackled, to be confronted, and if we do so with goodwill, if we have men and women who are willing to tackle problems with a spirit of goodwill around this table, then we shall prevail. But it all depends on our capacity to act and as well as our willingness to set an example. Now, I would like to briefly touch on two dimensions which have been center stage during the Italian chairmanship throughout 2018. First of all, the Mediterranean dimension. Now, I say this in the Italian city of Milan, which of course looks to the Mediterranean, but finds itself geographically in the very heart of the continent. We, however, are aware that a very substantial number of its members are located on the Mediterranean, and the Mediterranean is experiencing fresh instability. We know that the Mediterranean is discussed in various international organizations in which Mediterranean countries sit. We also know that it is discussed bilaterally. We're aware of the fact that it is an area of instability right now, but we also know that historically it has been an area across which links have been forged, particularly at times when this kind of organization was not even dreamt of. So we have to show that we are able to secure greater stability as well as security for all people living in the enlarged Mediterranean area on behalf of all the countries we represent here today. So the OSCE, of course, has a Mediterranean dimension as well as a Eurasian dimension on top of the Euro-Atlantic dimension. We are an organization which spans a wide geographical area, and that is what animates us. We have representatives from our 6 partner countries from the southern shores of the Mediterranean here with us today, and I'm very grateful indeed for representatives of those nations for being with us here today. We have to try and secure stability, to manage migratory flows, to try and avert the tragedies we have witnessed on the Mediterranean. We have to view the Mediterranean as a sea of unity and cooperation. We have to work with our partners on the southern shores of the Mediterranean as well as with the countries from which so many migrants set out, countries which are ravaged by war, beset by many problems, civil strife, as well as economic difficulties. So we have to also extend our efforts to those countries which are beset with difficulties. But we look at things from the point of view of security, but we have to view security in the widest possible definition of the term. It really has to be 360 degrees. It has to be a panoramic view of security, if you like, in all its facets. So we shouldn't just be there firefighting crises as they erupt. Rather, we must demonstrate a capacity to deal with challenges, as that is a prerequisite for fixing them, not only in the geographical area covered by our organization, in which we have certain hotspots, certain crises, and it is with great regret that one recalls that there are a number of ongoing crises on our continent, notwithstanding a determination and willingness to try and resolve those conflicts by adhering to all of the agreements entered into by the parties in Minsk, as well as under the Normandy format and in the contact group. And that is why I would appeal to you all, to our collective will, to weigh up some of the most recent conflicts. I'm referring, of course, to the crisis that has recently emerged in the Azov Sea. And we have to do what we can to help to resolve that situation. Then there are a whole raft of protracted crises. Again, on the geographical area covered by this organization, we have the crisis in the region of Nagorno-Karabakh. You have the situation in Georgia, in Abkhazia, in South Ossetia. And it is very important, therefore, that we continue along the path we have mapped out, that we also turn our attention to the issue of Transnistria as well as full compliance with the Rome Protocol, which was signed in May under our chairmanship, as we see this as a vital component of any solution. And finally, there is a third dimension to these crises, which is not territorial, something that is not specific to interstate conflicts, rather one that is cross-cutting. And I believe that we would do well to pay special attention to this, because it is one which is present in our daily lives. Our people are worried about the spread of international organized crime. They're worried about cybercrime and cybersecurity. They are also concerned about terrorism, the rise of fundamentalism. There's a great challenge as well in tackling corruption that we see in all our societies. I'm sorry to say it's something that has been present in human societies since the dawn of time. But the OSCE can help to restore a climate of trust, and that is why we must redouble our efforts to stamp out this scourge which is common to us all. And I can only commend the excellent work that has been done by Paolo Severino, who is the personal representative of the chairman in office at the helm of a working group on tackling corruption. And we have documents, and it is something that we will be able to delve deeper into during our discussions. The chairmanship has also organized conferences on terrorism, on cybercrime, on issues relating to corruption in the digital age, because technological advances are a wonderful thing. There are all kinds of positive benefits, but at the same time, there are drawbacks. There is a dark side to those technological advances, and that is why we have to do what we can to manage them better. Returning to the subject of security, we need to beef up the three dimensions of security. We have military and political security. We have to pay close attention to structured dialogue on major current and future challenges which concern our members and the countries they represent here. Then we have the economic, social, and environmental facets of security. We have seen rapid technological change. We are faced with climate change. We have to prevent the scourge of corruption that I mentioned a moment ago. So a number of socio-economic and environmental challenges that have to form part and parcel of the principle of sustainable development on this continent. We have to safeguard social rights. We have to help out the weakest sections of our society, as well as protect the environment. We must ensure that we have fair and shared economic growth. Now, we believe in the rule of law. We believe that rules should prevail, a rule-based order, and that is why we have to protect the rights of the weakest in our societies. As individuals, as states, as communities, all of us can be at risk of having those rights violated. That is why we have to safeguard the law-based state. We have to safeguard individual rights and freedoms. We also have to respect basic values such as freedom of the press, freedom of the mass media. It is a huge privilege for us to do so because we can then better explain things that we're all too often criticized for. By having that free press, we also need to make sure that women are involved in politics and sit on the boards of companies, that there is gender parity. It is absolutely crucial that we protect the weakest in our societies, that we protect minorities, that we protect the elderly. I mean, we have aging societies. In one sense, of course, that is a positive thing, but we have to make sure that we are in a position to manage these demographic changes. We also need to tackle intolerance and all forms of intolerance. At that, we have to stamp out racism, xenophobia, intolerance which is based on religion. And sitting here this morning, one has to mention the scourge of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, as well as the persecution of Christians in many countries. And this, therefore, has to remain a focus of our work. We hope for a better civilization, for a better future. Now, of course, it is up to you to judge what the Italian chairmanship has achieved. But over the last 12 months, at the helm, we have endeavored to work as a team. I think that we have managed that, but we will, of course, be communicating the results to you here today, but that is what we will do at the end of our deliberations. But what I can tell you is that we are aware of the fact that we bear a huge responsibility today, shared with all of you sitting around this table. It is up to us all to do things better, to do the very best by our nations and our citizens. And if we work hand in hand, that means that we work together for peace and for a positive future, the kind of future which inspires in us all greater confidence and hope. And with these words, I wish you all a pleasant day and a half's work.
Now, I will now proceed to the agenda item 4 and the address by the President of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. And I give the floor to George. Dear President, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson in office, dear ministers, dear ambassadors, colleagues, friends. It's my privilege to represent hundreds of parliamentarians at this distinguished forum at this critical time. Just last month, Europe commemorated the 100-year anniversary of the end of the First World War. We should keep this solemn occasion in mind as we pursue diplomatic solutions. We should recall that our first priority is always the pursuit of peace, security and stability. I regret that instead of focusing on resetting our relations here in Milan, much of our focus is on an armed confrontation between participating states. I'm referring, of course, to the escalation of tensions in the Kerch Strait between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. It is deeply worrying to hear news about shootings and blockades instead of receiving information about successful efforts to end this grave European crisis. So we are once again coming together at a time of great uncertainty and instability in our region. Besides challenges in the political military dimension, we also face economic and environmental challenges, with climate change counting the pose of threats to our collective security. Commitment to human rights and the rule of law is on the decline in many of our countries. At the same time, the powerhouse states are abandoning international agreements that have served as cornerstones of stability and embarking on new arms races. With the recent passing of the great American statesman George Bush, who presided over the end of the Cold War and was very instrumental in brokering the 1990 Charter of Paris for a new Europe, I can't help but recall his words nearly 30 years ago. We can realize a lasting peace and transform the East-West relationship to one of enduring cooperation. President Bush and other leaders who forged this organization understood that with Europe entering uncertain waters, the OSCE was ideally suited to help countries navigate. The vision that they had was to make the OSCE part of everyday politics. They wanted an active, influential organization, and saw the value of a robust parliamentary dimension to this organization. With East-West relations now at their lowest point at any stage since the end of the Cold War, what we need is a strong OSCE that can serve as a forum for real confidence building. But, dear ministers, we must be honest with ourselves. As I have stated privately with many of you over the past year, the OSCE is only as strong as those around the table want it to be. Dialogue is of little value if not done in good faith. As leaders, it is up to all of you to demonstrate that good faith. Too often exchanges with the OSCE forums amount to little more than finger-pointing and mutual accusations. We become defensive when criticized and accuse each other of double standards. What we should be doing instead is discussing our efforts to implement the commitments that we have freely agreed to. In this regard, I would like to draw attention to many useful and strong recommendations adopted by OSCE parliamentarians in Berlin earlier this year, where we held a fruitful and dynamic annual session. In our Berlin Declaration, we urged greater commitment from governments to strengthening arms control regimes, security sector reform, the development of confidence and security building measures, and the good faith implementation of agreements. We also highlighted the need to recommit to principles of dialogue and deterrent. I hope these recommendations can help you to finalize the Milan ministerial decisions in coming days. Dear ministers, as a body of politicians drawn from each of your countries who work on a daily basis with the OSCE, we in the Parliamentary Assembly attach great value to the effectiveness of this organization. Therefore, we have been concerned in recent years by signs of growing dysfunctionality, much of which can be attributed to abuse of the consensus rule. When grounded in common cause, consensus is a powerful and very positive feature. However, when misused for petty purposes to block key meetings or shut down field offices, it endangers the very existence of the organization and only exacerbates tensions. We are politicians here, so allow me to speak bluntly. How do we look when our flagship human dimension meeting is forced to proceed without an agenda, or when other meetings are simply cancelled? The Parliamentary Assembly has long advocated adjustments to the consensus rule. While I do not suggest removing consensus for key issues of principle, I would urge modified consensus for more practical and technical issues. Parliamentarians have also long advocated for a strong OSCE presence in the field, where countries have benefited in most tangible way from this organization. Over the past year, I have had the opportunity to learn more about the excellent work being done in all three dimensions by the OSCE field presences, including Central Asia. This is a region where the OSCE has had and continues to have a significant impact in promoting regional cooperation and providing local stakeholders with the necessary tools to meet the multiplied challenges they face. This is something I have witnessed during my recent trips to Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. Yet field missions have been closed elsewhere, sometimes against the wishes of the host country. As I stated to the Permanent Council recently, it is a paradox that the OSCE is missing from the countries that would most benefit from its support, namely, for instance, in Caucasus. This situation has not improved in this region, with a notable lack of progress in the settlement of conflicts between Russia and Georgia, or between Armenia and Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh. I therefore ask that you recommit to finding the political will to enable the OSCE to carry out this work where it's needed the most. I have personally led 2 delegations to Ukraine this year, including the areas of the front line in Donbass with the support of Special Monitoring Mission. Seeing up close the tragic human cost of the conflict, I have stressed that urgent steps must be taken to alleviate the humanitarian situation, including the need to reach a sustained ceasefire. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly fully supports the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine with its internationally recognized borders, and has long called for the full implementation of the Minsk agreements by all sides, which remains the best path to a long-term solution to the crisis. In a visit to Moldova, I was pleased to hear about the significant achievements in the Transnistrian settlement process. This is proof that local ownership and political will produce very concrete results. The OSCE mission to Moldova and the chairmanship deserve recognition for their work. I would urge each of you to personally visit OSCE field operations in the coming year to see with your own eyes the positive work being done. Dear colleagues, throughout 2018, the Parliamentary Assembly has also engaged on issues such as terrorism, migration, climate change, arms control, the freedom of media, gender issues, and minorities, and it's a big package, working closely with our Mediterranean Asian partners. Our committees and special representatives continue their active work throughout field visits and other efforts, bringing parliamentarians from many different countries together to address these problems and deliver real results. We observed 9 elections, including the first ever mission also in Italy, in our hosting country. Regretfully, some of these elections observations have revealed also some regress. We need to remain vigilant in upholding our democratic standards. In the coming months, we will be closely following electoral developments in Armenia, Moldova and Ukraine with our partners from ODIHR. We in the Parliamentary Assembly are always happy to discuss with you the challenges of our region, to develop common approaches that deliver results, and to explore ways to strengthen our unique organization. But what it needs from all of us is political support and the necessary resources to carry out its mandate. This is why I would like to welcome the call by Kazakh President, very recent initiative, Nursultan Nazarbayev, for an OSCE summit in 2020. We hope the organization seizes on such opportunities for more high-level political dialogue, and with the aim to, first of all, with the aim to strengthen the organization, to make it more functional, more important. This is very important to maintain OSCE's relevance in these challenging times. Before I conclude, I would like to thank the OSCE chairperson in office, Minister Muavero Milanese, as well as your predecessor, Angelino Alfano, Guglielmo Pichi, and the whole Italian task force, and of course, Ambassador Azzoni and his team for their leadership over the past year. We have greatly appreciated your efforts to strengthen multilateralism and to promote peace, security, stability, and cooperation in the OSCE area. We are especially grateful to the Italian chairmanship for demonstrating a strong attachment to the parliamentary dimension of the OSCE and understanding our added value. I look forward to the leadership that the Slovak chairmanship will bring and to our to our continued good cooperation. I hope this Milan Ministerial Council will bring fresh energy to the OSCE process, and I wish you all success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George. Thank you for your very kind words as to the presidency and the secretary, the ambassador, representative of Italy. We've tried really, as I said before, our best to the service of the organization. Now let's move on item 5 of our agenda. The floor is to the Secretary General for its speech. Thank you very much, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, Minister Moavero, and thank you for your warm welcome today. And I would also like to express my appreciation for the Italian chairmanship's leadership of the OSCE this year. And in particular, I would like to thank your dedicated teams in Vienna and in Rome, led by Ambassadors Azzoni and Matti. They did a great job. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today our security environment is more polarized, more unpredictable, more unstable. In short, more dangerous than it has been in decades. Our fundamental principles have been violated. Our security order is breaking down. Trust has rapidly faded, and we see growing unwillingness to engage. Tensions are rising. Tit-for-tat reactions are increasing. At the same time, many of the complex and interconnected challenges we now face are too big for states to handle on their own. They demand cooperative responses. Yet even here, in confronting common threats to our security, there is reluctance to work together. Dear Ministers, we share a common future, but we no longer seem to have a common vision for our future. What kind of world do we want to live in? Do we want it to be peaceful? I trust no one wants war. Our situation today is precarious, it is unpredictable. It would not take much for the dynamics of confrontation to spiral into a larger conflict. So we must find a way out of this dangerous situation. We must reduce tensions. We must rebuild trust and step by step restore a sense of common purpose. The first step towards trust is dialogue. I would even argue that dialogue is fundamentally the most powerful instrument we have at the OSCE. We can learn from our Cold War predecessors. Adversaries came together for dialogue, with the clear aim of preventing war. They looked for common ground through constructive engagement, and they found their way to compromise. The outcome was a set of principles that gave us a common security framework, principles that all participating states are committed to. Although these principles have since been violated, they remain valid. Indeed, the instability created by their violation confirms that we need to return to a rules-based system. So we must recommit to our principles. But we must also return to the path of constructive engagement. And dear Ministers, this is not a contradiction. Constructive engagement does not mean forgetting about our principles. It means results-oriented dialogue and selective cooperation on issues that affect the security of all participating states. Our principles should underpin our efforts. The OSCE, thanks to its rare platform for inclusive dialogue and joint action, has great potential to help de-escalate tensions, rebuild trust and confidence, reduce the risks of misunderstanding, and foster pragmatic cooperation in our region. So I urge you, the participating states, to make better use of this organization. We are already successfully fostering engagement and cooperation in a number of areas where interests converge. including preventing and countering violent extremism and terrorism, and combating trafficking in people, drugs, and weapons. Cybersecurity is another good example. The OEC's 16 confidence-building measures to reduce the risk of conflict arising from cyber threats show that states have an interest in cooperating to prevent tit-for-tat retaliation or escalation to conventional military responses. I also see a potential in the economic and environmental dimension, and around issues, some issues in the human dimension, like protecting the safety of journalists, combating violence against women, or promoting tolerance and non-discrimination. After all, we are all proud of our comprehensive approach to security. Given the current level of tensions, we should focus on incremental progress. Rebuilding trust takes time, so we must be patient but persistent. Although the OEC's formal bodies have become politicized, I am encouraged by the growing willingness of participating states to engage in informal dialogue platforms, and in particular in the structured dialogue. Since its creation 2 years ago, this data-driven process has considered threat perceptions, force postures, and military doctrines. More recently, it has begun to discuss practical steps to reduce military risks, including by promoting military-to-military contacts. This is a key step to preventing an unwanted escalation caused by accident, which is unfortunately a very real danger today. I remain hopeful that the structured dialogue might help to revitalize existing confidence and security building measures, enhance critically needed military risk reduction mechanisms, and eventually revive interest in conventional arms control. Ministers, seeking a peaceful and durable resolution to the crisis in and around Ukraine remains the OEC's most urgent priority. I'm concerned about recent developments. I call on the parties to observe restraint and to settle their differences through diplomacy. The OEC is ready to provide its good offices and conflict prevention tools to help ease tensions. I'm equally alarmed by the growing humanitarian crisis in eastern Ukraine. Every week, civilians are killed or injured by shelling, by landmines or explosive remnants of war. Damage to essential infrastructure has reduced access to basic services and in some cases risks environmental disaster. Ministers, the trilateral contact group, it needs to be given more room for maneuver. The sides must engage to make progress toward a sustainable ceasefire and to reduce the human cost of the conflict. The OEC Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine, the SMM, is doing everything it can to improve conditions for people in the conflict zone, including reporting on landmines, facilitating critical repairs, and easing civilian transit across the line of contact. This year alone, the SMM facilitated about 1,000 localized ceasefires to enable repairs to water, to electricity, to gas and communication infrastructure, serving people on both sides of the line of contact. While we can all be proud of the SMM's achievements, every success story of this kind signals the failure of the sides to protect civilians. A new political stimulus is urgently needed to end the conflict in eastern Ukraine. The OEC can facilitate the progress, but the sides need to muster the necessary political will. So I appeal to all those with influence to push the sides to take concrete steps to implement the Minsk agreements, which remain the best route to achieving sustainable peace. And I also remind the sides of their obligation to respect and to protect both SMM monitors and SMM assets, and this includes UAVs, and to provide full and unfettered access throughout the conflict zone. Political will is key to resolving the crisis in and around Ukraine, as well as the protracted conflicts in the OEC region. In Moldova, the OEC helped broker agreement on a package of 8 confidence-building measures that is improving life for people on both sides of the Dniester River. These concrete steps by Chisinau and Tiraspol show that even after many years of stalemate, cooperation is possible. And cooperation can lead to practical results, provided the international stakeholders take a unified stance and the sides marshal the political will to allow progress. I do hope Moldova's example will inspire the parties to other conflicts in our region to take steps toward peace. The OEC remains ready to support them. Ministers, the OEC has repeatedly proven that it has the flexibility, the tools and the expertise to be an effective instrument for promoting security and stability. I'm convinced that we have the most robust toolbox for preventing and resolving conflicts of any regional organization. Since our instruments are especially important when tensions are high, I welcome continued efforts to strengthen our toolbox. But the organization must also be prepared to face new kinds of challenges and to seize opportunities for cooperation. Opportunities like the new spirit of regional cooperation in Central Asia, or growing interest among our Mediterranean and Asian partners to confront shared challenges together. In these and other promising areas, we need to take a more strategic perspective and focus our energies where we can have the greatest impact. The Secretariat has been working closely with the Troika to develop more coherent and coordinated approaches. We have also enhanced our ability to provide strategic support not only to the Troika, but to all of you. Leveraging partnerships can also help us make the most of opportunities. Given our limited resources, we can strengthen synergies that multiply the impact of our efforts. The Secretariat has been working hard to enhance cooperation with other regional organizations and to further operationalize our relationship with the United Nations. We continue to align our work more closely with the global agenda. UN Secretary General Guterres has called for a surge in diplomacy for peace, with special focus on prevention and on peace building. These are both areas where the OEC has decades of experience. So we are well placed to support the implementation of the Sustainable Development Agenda and in particular of SDG 16 in our region. Dear Ministers, in recent months, as tensions have continued to mount, I have sensed a growing realization that we need the OEC now more than ever. Last year in Vienna, I promised you I would strive to ensure that our organization is fully prepared to deal with today's critical security challenges. Since then, the Secretariat has been looking at ways to preserve and to strengthen the organization's flexibility and responsiveness despite shrinking resources. And I'm grateful for your support for these efforts. We have also been looking at how we can enhance our impact in the field and integrate women and youth across the 3 dimensions of our work. And we are studying how to reform our cumbersome budget process, attract and retain high-quality staff, make better use of technology, and more effectively promote the organization and the impact of our work. Dear Ministers, ensuring that the OEC is fit for purpose is our role, is our shared responsibility. I will continue to look for ways to improve our organization. But I'm counting on you to provide the political vision and the strategic priorities to guide us, and the resources to enable us to fulfill them. The OEC is already extremely lean, inexpensive and efficient. And we have repeatedly shown that we can deliver. But the organization can only be as effective as you enable us to be. Continuing a policy of zero nominal growth will undermine our organization's capacity to achieve its full potential. Next year, our region will continue to face enormous challenges, and I look forward to working with the incoming Slovak chairmanship and pledge the organization's continued commitment to assist participating states in implementing your decisions and to support your efforts to strengthen security and stability in our region and beyond. And in closing, I would like to thank the OEC staff. To thank the OEC staff for their dedication and praise the excellent cooperation among the Secretariat, field operations, institutions, and the Parliamentary Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General. Now we have exhausted the first part of our session today. It is now my duty to close the opening section, and we can take up the next agenda items. I would kindly request the delegation to remain in their seats while the other will leave the room because the opening sector is closed. Very well. So we will start with the list of speakers. The first is Her Excellency Aurelia Frick, Minister Foreign Affairs, Justice and Culture, Liechtenstein. Please, you have the floor.
Herr Vorsitzender,